And so we get in the drive, has a smooth drive, and I'm asking him questions about some of the features inside, and I wasn't getting the answers I wanted. And I remember when I got back to the lot, we drove back into the lot, he's looking at me, with the weakest sales close I've ever, heard, which is, so what do you think? Would you like to take it home? And I'm like, no, I don't want to take it home. I said, you totally turned me off the car. So what I did was, I waited about a week because I was kind of depressed, and I really wanted to, somebody to really, I wanted that experience. So I remember I went up to Fort Lauderdale, and I remember I met this guy, I think his name was Bob, and what Bob did to me that day was fantastic. He did something like this. We got there. I said, look, I looked at this car. I've driven it. I said, can you just, tell me why I should buy this versus this other one? He says, sure, Victor, come on this way. By the way, he kept using my name. Come on, Victor. What's the sweetest word in English language? Your name.
Your name, yeah.
Absolutely. So he's like, look, Victor. And he walked me around the car. And all of a sudden he started giving me all these details about the construction of the car. I'm talking about everything from crush boxes to how these crash cages are built prior to the actual body molding being put on the car. He just went into such detail that I got to the point where I'm like, enough, okay? All I can tell you is a half hour later, I was signing papers to buy the car. He sold me. And everything in his body language, you can see his facial expression. He was into that product. He was into that car. The amount of information he knew about that car sold me right there and then. Because what we want, we're not going to know everything about the car, but we want to feel comfortable with somebody who's telling us about the car, that they know what they're talking about. And I'm telling you, this was the best car sales pitch that I've ever had. And the amount of detail that went into it and the amount of presentation that went into it, convinced me that when you're face-to-face, one-on-one with somebody, that's critical moment right there. That's when you got to sell. And if you don't have the presentation skills and you don't have the knowledge base, which is the product knowledge we mentioned at the beginning of this, Richard, you're going to have a hard time being great at what you do.
That's interesting, and I'm glad you just brought us full circle. At the very beginning of this call, we had talked about what's the first person or who's the first person that needs to be sold, and that's ourselves. Whether that's sold on being a salesperson as a career or sold on our product. And it sounds like Bob was definitely not only sold as being a salesperson, but also sold on the vehicle that he was communicating to you. That's excellent.
Richard, Bob was the man that day. He was the man.
Yeah, that's awesome. Victor, any final thoughts on having a mindset for sales success?
Final thoughts. All right, I'll end with this final story, Richard. We lived in Minnesota for 10 years. And in Minnesota, I had this neighbor. His name was Harold. And Harold's hobby was always bird watching. So he had all these bird feeders in the front yard. But Harold had a problem. We had squirrels that would always eat the food in the bird feeders. And so one day I see Harold, and he's out there, and he's putting this grease on the base of the tree, right? And so I asked him, because you got to ask, right? What are you doing, Harold? He says, well, I'm hoping that by putting this grease, it'll, keep the squirrels off the tree. They won't be able to climb up, so forth and so on. Well, I don't know, next day, 2 days later, the food was gone again, right? I'm going to say about another week later, this time I see Harold come out, and he's wrapping this, metal around the base of the tree. Again, the philosophy being the same, that if he puts it around the base of the tree, the squirrels won't be able to use their claws to climb up the tree and get to the food, right? But, Richard, you know what happens. The food's gone in a couple of days, right? So the next thing he tries is that, you ever see those funnels that they put on dogs so they won't...
Oh, yeah.
Right? So think of that turned downward, okay? And he put these jagged edges on it, which I thought was kind of cruel. And again, his whole thing is maybe they won't be able to get around the funnel that's wrapped around the base of the tree, right? And the other thing he tried was putting the bird feeder at the edge of one of the branches. The philosophy there being that the squirrel's weight wouldn't be able to, wouldn't be supported by the branch, and therefore it couldn't get the food, right? But you know what happened, right? The squirrel
sure.
got the food. Now, you want to be great in sales, you got to be like the squirrel. And the reason the squirrel will always win is because for 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 a year, that squirrel is focused on just one thing, and that is getting that food. And when you have that type of focus, when you have that type of commitment, there are no obstacles, as we've all heard, right? We just have inconveniences that we have to work around. And Be like the squirrel. Always go after that food. And there's something about focus. When you focus in that hard on something, it calls into play all these, these thought processes of how to get around problems. You figure things out faster when you're more focused. So to everybody listening to this, be like the squirrel. Be focused. 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365. Be the squirrel.
Victor, we've learned about torpedoes and hound dogs and squirrels, and I guess the listeners here have some choices to make for sure. I know for myself, just from this short 30-plus minute call, you've outlined some areas that I know I need to consistently work on, and the benefit of putting a call like this together is for individuals that have chosen a sales career to take charge and realize that there's some things to continually sharpen that saw and perfect their presentation skills and their communication skills. I mean, this has just been excellent information. I definitely appreciate it. Victor, again, I just want to thank you for your time. I'm certain that every single person that has an opportunity to listen to this call in the automotive industry throughout the U.S. Are going to be absolutely delighted to have an opportunity to listen to what you bring. Just once again, thank you very much, Victor.
Thank you very much, Richard. And I just want to end on these words. Even at my age, even after all the years I've been in sales, I still read sales books. I still keep the motivation going. 2 books a month periodically. I pick it up. I'm still learning. And I hope everybody listening to this understands that you never stop learning about sales. Thanks, Richard.
Definitely. Thank you very much.